Good morning. You know, I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and it's really based on something I saw done by somebody else, so it's not original. But I haven't really seen it done this way, so I'm going to try this. I'm going to try and do it quickly because I have to go to work. But no matter where I've lived, and I've lived in a number of cities around the world, or I've spent time around the world in various places, the newspapers, the local newspapers, although they all have great similarities, have a different approach and report different things than what you see back home. There was a guy on CNN named Aaron Brown who used to have galley copies of tomorrow's paper and just read the headlines to you and kind of give you an idea of what was important in that place. So I thought that I would try and do that here, except that I would try and give you an idea of what is the view from here. So I'm going to call this the view from here. And I have three of the four major papers here. The other major paper I happened to get on Saturdays, and I didn't pick up today. Also, it's a slow news day today, so it's not going to be as interesting as it could be, but it's still interesting to know what happens. It's Thursday, August the 21st, 2008, and this is the view from here. I'm in Toronto, Canada, and let's see what's in the news today. I'm going to start with the National Post. The National Post, their headline today is new CMA head urges mixed care. That would probably be tough to understand if you didn't live in Canada. We have national health and everybody gets covered, and in an effort to keep it equal, doctors can't provide private care for anybody. They're not allowed to. And the new head of the CMA, which is the Canadian Medical Association, in his first speech suggested that the private sector be allowed to enhance the system that we already have by being allowed to run 5 or 10% of procedures through private medical facilities. What I find interesting about this is that this gentleman who made this speech, Robert Willett, runs 5 private medical imaging clinics in the Montreal area, so he probably has the vested interest in trying to get them to change the rules. This particular story, there's some more to this story that I found in one of the other papers we'll talk about when we get to it. But the other big headline in the paper this morning, there's a big colored picture of a fella in Nairobi, Kenya, and the headline is, "I live here on less than $1 a month." And it turns out that this is Senator Barak Obama's long-lost brother, and he's been tracked down for the first time living in the shanty town in, Kenya. The Italian edition of Vanity Fair said it found George Hussein Onyango Obama living in a hut in the ramshackle town of Huruma in the outskirts of Nairobi. And it goes on to say that him and his brother are both Islamic, but that they don't know anything about their brother, or the way they expressed it was they don't care what anybody is. I find it interesting that as the conventions approach, the stories like this start coming out at this point. They seem to save them for the end, which would bring me to another thing which is not in the papers, which is, isn't it amazing how things have changed. In fact, there is actually another story in one of the other papers about Barack Obama. This paper here is, we just read, was the National Post. It would probably be considered a little more liberal, a little left of center. This would be the Globe and Mail. These two papers are what we call national papers. They're available across the country in major cities, much like the New York Times is and certain other papers in the States. Chicago Tribune, I find that everywhere, even here. So this paper is called the Globe and Mail, and this is a much older paper. This particular paper has only been around maybe 10, 12 years, and Globe and Mail is a very old paper, and I can't remember how old it is, but it's hundreds of years old, and it's very conservative. And the headlines in the Globe and Mail today are nationwide outbreak spurs massive meat recall. This is kind of a disturbing story because There's one person dead and at least 16 people have been sickened by a nationwide outbreak of Listeria infection that may have originated in a Toronto meat processing plant. This reminds me of the thing with the tomatoes and peppers and salmonella. Now, Maple Leaf Meat Processing is one of the Canada's largest meat processing companies, and I'll look it up and I'll tell you another time, but they're very big. They have 20 meat products that have been recalled, and the Toronto plant has been temporarily closed down. It's sort of interesting also because the Prime Minister of the country, Stephen Harper, just had a cabinet document leaked that suggested that they were about to change the laws to allow the meat industry to have more control over their own inspections, so the timing couldn't be worse. There's another story here with a color picture of this lady that says codeine can prove toxic for breastfed babies. It's also very disturbing because they've discovered apparently that some women contain a double copy of a gene that actually turns the painkiller codeine into high concentrations of morphine. And her child died as a result of it, and they're finding that where they thought it was only the odd or a few women that had this copy of the gene, it's far more widespread than they had thought. The other interesting thing is that there's a picture of Jamaican sprinter Usain Bolt, who runs like crazy. On the front page of the Canadian paper, there's a picture of the Jamaican gold winner because everyone in the world is amazed by this guy. Then we come to the Toronto Sun. The Toronto Sun is older than the National Post and is part of a chain that's across Canada. It was made as kind of like a copy of a London tabloid, right down to having a daily Sunshine Girl. You go into any garage in the city and you'll see walls covered with Sunshine Girls. They have a Sunshine Girl every day, 365 of them a year they need, so as you can imagine, they're probably going to ask me soon to be a Sunshine Girl because they're running out of good-looking people to put in the paper. The big headline, and this is a little more in the form of a tabloid, this paper: outbreak kills one, sickens dozens. That noise you hear is my espresso machine turning off at the worst time. And this is about the Maple Leaf outbreak of Listeria at Maple Leaf. There's an article inside about the death of Prague Spring when Russia invaded Czechoslovakia. And then, of course, your lotto numbers and chock full of stereo ads and bankruptcy ads and that kind of thing. The thing I was going to mention to you that was interesting was that in the Globe and Mail, there's also an article about Obama here below the fold. And this one is entitled, "For Obama, August is the cruelest month." Ain't that the case? His poll numbers have changed drastically. He was ahead of McCain by 7 points in July, and now he's trailing by 5 points, 41% to McCain's 46%. And this is pretty ominous stuff, and it goes on to talk about the fact that, perception and defining one another. And I just think that this whole, I'm here in Canada, and from my point of view, that this whole primary process and election process in the States is the most grueling thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's kind of like a basketball game where, it's up, it's down, it's about the same all the time. And nothing really happens till the last 5 minutes when somebody drains a three-pointer from downtown. And I think it's the same thing because, it's interesting how these stories about his long-lost brother living in a shanty town who happens to be Islamic come out now, just before the convention. And that's what I see in my newspapers this morning. And that's the view from here in Toronto. And hopefully I'll do this again for you. If you've enjoyed it, let me know. Thanks. Bye.